What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday, especially if, you work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Quite the grind, end of the work week. Shout out to all those grinders who are listening to us on the way home from work, sitting in traffic on the turnpike. This one's for you. This is the NHL Stokastic Strategy Show, sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Josue Joshua. Joining me as always, Slim Cliffy. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. I was afraid I might not have power today because we got a torrential rainstorm yesterday, like hurricane season level rainstorm, which in January, whatever. Was worried we might lose power. Power's here. We're good to go. Was just thinking about or looking at some news for today's slate. Obviously, we're going to get to the Vancouver Canucks game later in the show. They had Lane Peterson on, quote, the top line with Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko at morning skate. And then I just saw a tweet as we were coming on the air that Lane Peterson was put on waivers.
He still can play tonight.
Yeah, he can still play, but the official wording was he has been placed on waivers for the purpose of being reassigned to Abbotsford. So, if he technically he can still play tonight. I just don't know what's going on with Vancouver. Like, maybe there was somebody dinged up that might come in. Maybe they're going to call up somebody else. I mean, we'll get to that show a little bit later, or that game a little bit later in the show, but that's just a headache waiting to happen. Also, obviously we'll talk about Toronto. Austin Matthews being injured. That really changes the complexion of this slate. There are only 8 games. We got a little bit of time to talk about it. In my picks article, like right in the introduction, the one thing that's of note on this slate is half the league's playing. There are 16 teams in play. There's no Tampa Bay. There's no Boston. There's no Edmonton. There's no Colorado. There's, Austin Matthews is now hurt for Toronto. Like, there are a lot of the elite top options, especially amongst the forwards, not playing tonight. And I think now that Austin Matthews is hurt, it really cracks the slate wide open. And I like nights like tonight.
Yeah, me too. And okay, so obviously Matthews is not going to go into the All-Star game. Why did the NHL pick Barkov over someone like Timmy Stützle or something?
Well, it should be Rasmus Dahlin. Like, first of all, like Dahlin's on pace for 96 points, which I think would be the highest for a defenseman in this century. And if he cracks 100, it'd be the first time in over 30 years, and he's not an all-star.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, well, the reason they take Barkov is it's in Florida. It gives the Florida Panthers another all-star. Exactly. I don't particularly care about the all-star game. Like, I'm old enough for, like, it's not a big deal to me. I want it reframed that it is a weekend for children. It's not a weekend for honoring the best players in the game, because if that were the case, Rasmus Dahlin would have been one of the first 5 names listed, and not an omission after we have 40 players named, 5 players like back out for injury or whatever. So 5 extra players, like there are like 50 all-stars in the NHL, and Rasmus Dahlin's not one of them. There has to be a better way to do this.
I think Torts has it right. He's like, I just don't give a shit, and that's just the way to do it. I don't know why I sounded like Seth Rogen.
Well, yeah, like all-star games are for younger fans, like probably fans under the age of 15 that just want to see their favorite players play together, and I get that. I just, like I said, I just want the debate reframed as one of a children's game and not one of honoring the best players in the league, because it's clearly not, the latter is clearly not the case.
Yeah. Anyway, NHL is a flawed sport, or a flawed league, we'll say. Corruption from top to bottom. Find some new coaches. Like, why are we recycling Rick Tocchet again? Never mind. We have to be out at before 3 today. We don't have time for these shenanigans. There is a bunch of people in here, though. You guys need to smash that like button. We need likes. Helps you guys get this free content. That's, who doesn't like free? And after you smash that like button, if you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. This isn't rocket surgery. You know what I mean? And if you're driving home from work or listening to this later, all of our shows are available in podcast form, except for Live Before Lock. Obviously, no shelf life there. Please leave a 5-star review. It helps us out as well. Shout out to Prize Picks. We have a nice deal for you guys a little bit later in the show. Let's hop into this slate. Let's try to decipher this madness and see what we come up with, shall we? Ottawa Senators with a 2.6 total heading into Toronto. The Maple Leafs have a 3.5 total. Anton Forsberg, Matt Murray confirmed. Obviously, the Leafs total has gone down. It was 3.8 this morning. Matthews ruled out, down to a 3.5. Josh Norris also out for the season. Sucks for him. Matthews probably needs to block less shots and shoot more, and he'd be spraining less knee ligaments. I digress. We have Matty Joseph on the top line with Kachuk and Stützle. Ridley Grieg in between Giroux and Kitty Cat again. Leafs going with Tavares, Marner, Bunting. Tavares and Marner obviously have a big sample this season. I think Bunting's probably the best winger they've played with this season. I'll let you answer that for sure. The second line is the all-Swedish line. It's Kalle Järnkrok, Willie Nylander, and Pontus Holmberg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Holmberg's not some, slap. He's I don't know if he's a top 6 NHLer, but, he can hold his own, I think, with those two guys on his wing. So, I don't mind it. The problem here is with DFS, right? You're seeing massive ownership on this top line of Tavares, Bunting, Marner. And this is still a really good matchup. Luckily, Marner has a big sample with Tavares, but recently they just broke him up because they weren't doing anything. Bunting there maybe helps. Bunting does jump to the top power play unit, makes that top line fully correlated, but ownership over 25% here on an 8-gamer. I'm kind of looking towards maybe that second line. Nylander on the top power play, getting under 10% ownership here. Kalle Järnkrok, 3,100 low ownership. From an ownership standpoint, I don't mind that second line. I understand going to that top line. I just worry how the Leafs are going to react with no Matthews. It's an unknown. You can't really quantify it. Maybe the Leafs come out and just smash, but maybe they come out flat. I don't know. So I don't really like paying 30% ownership here for some unknowns. I think I like, honestly, the Senators side a little bit better here. There's no ownership. Just from an ownership play, why not play, some of the Suns power play?
Yeah, I assume there is going to be a lot of ownership on that Toronto top line. Obviously, Bunting jumped up there on the top power play at morning skate today. So that top line is perfectly correlated on the power play. Like you were mentioning, tons of ownership, over 25% projected on DraftKings, less on FanDuel where they are relatively expensive. They're $23K, $22,900 on FanDuel. So less ownership, but still, in the mid-teens. Tavares, Marner, and Bunting don't have a big sample. They haven't played a lot together. Bunting's been pretty much attached to the hip with Austin Matthews, but they do have 60 minutes together, which is, that's something. And they produced very well in those 60 minutes plus. 3.9 expected goals for, 3.8 actual goals for at 5-on-5. Like, that is really, really good. I'm not super concerned about a top line matchup against the Ottawa Senators. Matthew Joseph, like, he's fine, but he's not somebody like I'm considerably worried about defensively. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't adding like Jesper Fast or Niederreiter to the line or something like that. So it's not a big deal for me in that sense. Beyond that, like the Ottawa top line slightly below average by Kachuk and Stützle slightly below average by expected goals against 5-on-5 this year, well below average by actual goals against, 4 goals against per 60 minutes, as the Ottawa goaltending's been pretty bad behind them. So it's a perfectly fine matchup for the Toronto top line. I think I'm just with you. Do I want to play them at 20% plus? I bet there are some contests where, with the lack of super high-end options up front today, I bet there are some contests where Tavares is like 35%. You know what I mean? Because he's the one-off center to use. So I have no problem fading them at that ownership. I do think they're still a fine play. I'm kind of worried about how the power play is going to go without Austin Matthews. But I was looking over how they've done without him over the last couple of years, because he has missed some games. Like, he hasn't been a guy that's played 82 games year in and year out. He missed some games last year. The power play's still been good without him. Only 35 minutes, so not a huge sample, but shot attempts basically right in line. Goals for down a bit, but still over 10 per 60 minutes. Like, it seems like the power play should be at least passable with him, even without him there. So they're fine to play. I'm with you. I think there's going to be too much ownership. One thing I would do to kind of negate that is, I think you're fine to take off Bunting and put on Nylander. They're not going to just stick with these 4 lines and just roll line 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's not the way it's going to go. There are going to be some shifts where Nylander jumps on the top line. There are going to be some shifts where Nylander jumps on the third line. Like, Nylander's going to find a way to get to 18 or 19 minutes or whatever, right? Like, he's not going to play like 16 minutes or 15 minutes unless, it's a blowout or something. So if you're worried about ownership, you mentioned Nylander around 10%. I have no problem taking Bunting out and putting Nylander in, because I think Nylander ends up on that line sometimes this game anyway. And he gets top power play correlation, and he's going to find his way all around the lineup. So that's kind of the way I would treat Toronto. I do think Toronto 3 is kind of interesting. Like, they, Engvall and Kampf don't really have bad numbers together. And I suspect they're going to get a little bit more ice time here. Like, I don't think Pontus Holmberg is going to step in and play 17 minutes a game like Tavares was. You know what I mean? So I think Toronto 3 could see a small bump here. I wouldn't force a need to with the lack of expensive options on the slate today, but like a one-off Engvall, one-off Kampf, something like that, I think is perfectly fine here as a salary saving option. On the Ottawa side, there's not a whole lot on the Toronto end that really worries me from a matchup perspective. It would just be that Toronto third line, because they do play pretty well defensively at times. Like, I'm not worried about Holmberg and Järnkrok being like an elite defensive duo or something like that. So I'm fine with Ottawa across the board. I would probably just go to Kachuk and Stützle. Stützle's going to play 20 plus minutes. Kachuk's going to play around 18. They generate a ton of offense. Their only problem is their league average shooting at 5-on-5. Like, if they can ever improve on that, they're going to post like great offensive numbers. So I would go with Kachuk and Stützle. Like, the Toronto power plays, it's not bad, but it's not elite or anything. Like, it's not like a Dallas or a Carolina or something like that. So No problem with going with Kachuk, Stützle, leave on Joseph if you want to keep it cheap, or, throw on, DeBrincat, or dip all the way down and add Batherson or something like that. I think that's perfectly fine. It would be power play players that would focus on both sides here, though I do like that Toronto third line and parts of that third line a little bit.
Yeah, I was just looking at Stützle's minutes. His last 15 games, he was under 20 minutes once, and he played 19 and a half, and he got as high as 26.
I think his first game back from injury, he played like 26 minutes or something like that. Like, this guy gets leaned on heavily, especially with Josh Norris out again.
Yeah, so like he's getting 20 to 26 minutes, like more realistically 20 to 23 minutes tonight. So yeah, there's nothing really on the Leaf side, like to mention, that's gonna deter me from getting low-owned Senators in my lineup if that's the route I choose. Matt Murray doesn't really scare me as well. So yeah, like all things considered, yeah, I like the Leafs better, but I don't mind low-owned Sens here. And on the Leaf side, like I think Willie Nylander as a one-off is a nice way to get some lower-ish owned Leaf exposure, so I don't mind that. Let's move on to the next one. Trending towards a 7 over-under here. Los Angeles Kings with a 3.2 total. Heading into Florida, the Panthers have a 3.6 total. Phoenix Copley is confirmed. I think Alex Leon is probable.
Yeah.
He is just not it, baby. I think Sam Bennett's still out.
I don't think so.
Oh, he's back?
Yeah, he was at practice yesterday. I couldn't believe it.
Man, that injury looked really bad.
Yeah, I thought it was like, hey, he might be done for the season type of thing.
Yeah.
He missed it because he was injured Monday, and then I think he missed, or injured Tuesday, missed Wednesday. But he was at practice yesterday.
Yeah, so if he's in, he slides in between Kachuk and Verhaeghe. That is a line that, we both really like. I think it's a nice pivot off that very chalky Barkov line. The Bennett line, they just been better. They just haven't shot. Their shooting percentage is an issue. But, they can figure out in one game. You know what I mean? On the King side, if Leon's in net, I think there is a lot to consider on the Kings. I think you can go to the Kopitar-Kempe line just because you get two guys on the top power play and the Panthers take a ton of penalties. I think you can go to the third line with Fiala and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan. Two of them are on the top power play unit, and they're even cheaper. Blake, you can leave Blake Lizotte if you want, or you can just play their best line is Iafale and Arvidsson. Panthers take a ton of penalties, but they're also not very good defensively 5-on-5. So I think besides maybe the Columbus-Vancouver game, I think this is the game where I have the most interest on both sides.
Yeah, I do have interest in both sides as well. I did write up Anton Lundell in the picks article, free to read for anybody that wants to go check it out. Head on over to Stokastic.com. Just go to the NHL section. It's right there on the homepage. Lundell was having a pretty bad start to the season, 15 points in the first 35 games. That's bad for a guy that's supposed to be, the second line center of the future for them. It has changed quite a bit because he did get moved up beside Alexander Barkov. He has 7 points in 9 games skating next to Barkov, 3.6 shots per game, skating 17 minutes a night. He's been really, really good next to Barkov. But like you said, that Florida top line coming in with a lot of ownership. DraftKings projected ownership coming in around 17%, lower on FanDuel, down around 11%, where they're a little bit more expensive, but still easily into the double digits. They haven't necessarily been that great either. They're up over 100 minutes in their sample together. 2.1 expected goals for, 1.9 against. That's real good defensively. 2.4 actual goals for. Expected goals and actual goals are both below average. That Barkov, Lundell, Reinhart line. They're being used pretty heavily in a defensive role. A lot of their starts are in the defensive zone. So that's part of the reason for it. But like I said, Lundell is shooting. Barkov has started to come alive a little bit. Reinhardt's still in the top power play unit, even though he's not having a normal season. I just think considering their ownership and considering the line just really hasn't been that great. Like, I don't know if I would just full stack Florida 1 and be like, yes, these are the Florida players I'm going to use tonight. I agree with you. I think Florida 2 is just a flat out much better line. I was looking to see if their numbers might have been dropping off of late, but in the month of January, 5.3 expected goals per 60 minutes, 3.1 actual goals. You mentioned their shooting percentage. They're shooting 6.3% this month, which is well below league average. I think the league average is 8.3% at 5-on-5. And they're still scoring 3.1 goals per 60 minutes because they're taking so many shots. That's why their expected goals is over 5. It's just a super elite line. Going into that Kings second line, really, that sucks. But I think until the Florida second line shows signs of slowing down, which they haven't yet at over 100-minute sample, I think they're playable in just about every single matchup, and this one is not an exception. So I do like Florida 2 the best here. I would just probably find a way to make it some sort of power play stack because the Kings, penalty kill is not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And they are above average by time shorthanded and per game this season. So Florida could get their power plays here. Something like Barkov, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, I think is something you can do. Obviously like Barkov, Reinhart, Tkachuk, if you just want to make it a power play stack. I just think if I was stacking Florida tonight, considering all the ownership on the top line and the less ownership on the second line, it would be making some sort of stack with Tkachuk and Verhaeghe in it, I think. Whether it's Barkov, whether it's, just having Bennett and going Florida 2, whether it's, Barkov and Reinhart, getting all 3 guys on the power play, whatever. I would find a way to make it with Tkachuk and Verhaeghe, I think. On the Kings side, I like the Kings top line in this matchup. Like, I know Arvidsson and I follow Dano as our favorite line and all that, and Kings 2 is kind of our unofficial mascot.
No, it's not Trevor Moore, so we can.
Exactly. It's not Trevor Moore there. But the Kings top line has been pretty good with Quinton Byfield there. 2.8 expected goals for per 60, 2.1 against, 3.6 actual goals for. So they're actually scoring, which is something that the top line had struggled with, even with Kevin Fiala there. I think it's a tough matchup going into Florida 1, but Florida is the most penalized team in the league. You get Kopitar and Kempe on the top power play unit. Byfield, I think he has 13 shots or something in his last 5 games. Like, he's getting involved offensively. He's not on the top power play unit, but he's getting involved, and he's playing 15-ish minutes. That's fine for $3,500. I like the Kings top line here. I agree with you. I think the third line is in play as well. Fiala, Anderson, Dolan, Lizotte. And as I mentioned, Florida takes a ton of penalties. Anderson, Dolan, and Fiala both on the top power play unit. I think that's one of the depth lines you can use if you're paying up super expensive elsewhere. Like if you're making a super expensive Ottawa stack or super expensive Dallas stack or something like that. I think Los Angeles 3 is one of the fillers you can use, but it's Kings 1 and Florida 2 I like best here.
Yeah. Went to full screen there by accident, and my head looks even bigger. But yeah, no, I think if you're not a Byfield stan, the Kings have just a load of prospects, and he's one of them. He's looked better since he's gotten up there, so I think you can leave him in. If you want to take him off and put in Fiala, take him off, put in Jared, Anderson, Dolan, I think that's fine as well. But yeah, this is a interesting game, and probably one you need some of both sides. Let's move on to the next one. Go from peak nitrous to a sludge fest. Detroit Red Wings with a 2.5 total heading into New York. There's no worse place than going to Long Island.
I think you say that every time the Islanders are on the slate.
It's just miserable. There's no easy way to get there. There's always traffic. It smells. Anyway, Magnus Hellberg is probable. They're back-to-back on the road, and Ville Husso won last night. Ilya Sorokin is confirmed. Detroit top line fully correlated with, Bertuzzi, Larkin, Raymond there. No ownership on them. It's a small-ish road total. I don't mind them because the Islanders suck defensively, but it's Sorokin in net. He has had some leaky games. Of course he's going to have some bad games when the team in front of you can't defend the puck. So, I don't know. like I probably get to the Wings and MMA 1-3. Probably don't have much interest at all. I think I don't mind the Nelson line here for the Islanders. The Red Wings suck. Like there's no like the way these lines are is just miserable. The coach is LeDond or LeBlondie or Blonde, whatever he is. He's just searching for something to work right now. Magnus Hellberg, they've had goalie issues outside of Husso this year. Even Husso's had issues himself. So I do kind of like that Nelson line.
Yeah, the thing with Detroit is there's just no ownership on them, right? Like that Larkin, Raymond, Bertuzzi line, the projected ownership right now on DraftKings is 0.5%. Higher on FanDuel because they're a pretty cheap line to stack, a perfectly correlated line to stack on FanDuel, but still only 2.5%. And it's like you mentioned, Sorokin's had some bad games. I think part of it is because this team isn't very good defensively. I mean, I think Adam Pellet coming back, obviously, I think helps quite a bit. But then you lose Noah Dobson, so it's like, do you really gain anything? So that Detroit line coming with no ownership, perfectly correlated, I think that's playable. They have been generating offense. Like that top line's up to 90 minutes together, nearly 90 minutes with Bertuzzi there. 2.9 expected goals for, 2.7 against. Problem is they're shooting 3.5%. Does that turn around against Ilya Sorokin? Seems like it might last one more game, but I'm not playing Detroit in 1-3 or anything like that. But if I was playing, 50 lineups, 100 lineups, I think a perfectly correlated top line doesn't matter the matchup. Perfectly correlated top line on an 8-game slate with under 1% ownership is always worth considering. If you have the lineups to do it. It is the Islanders side that I'm more interested in here. And it is that Nelson Lee Palmieri line. They're coming in with a little bit of negative leverage, but it's fine. It's still 8% ownership, just over 8%. Palmieri moved to the top power play unit. Nelson's off the top power play unit, but you still get 2 out of the 3 guys playing PP1, which is important because that Red Wings penalty kill has been not very good lately. I think they're bottom 5 by goals against per 60 minutes. Over their last 20 games and bottom 7 by shots against. So that penalty kill's really been struggling. The Islanders power play's not been good. I mean, flat out. But it is a good spot for them to get right against a backup goalie, team on the road, back-to-back with a bad penalty kill. So I do like Nelson Lee, Palmieri. I think Palmieri's cheap enough where you can just use him as a one-off if you don't want to stack the Islanders here. But it is that Nelson line that I like the best. I think it is a solid matchup against Detroit. That probably doesn't matter which line they go out against. I don't think I really have a ton of interest in the rest of the Islanders. Like Parise Pajot on the third line is not what I want to look for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I would probably rather just play like Ottawa 3 or Toronto 3 or something like that, or Kings 3. Barzal playing with Beauvillier and Cizikas, like Barzal and Beauvillier, well underwater by expected goal share when skating together this year. Like, I don't think that's a very good line. So I'll just take the line that I think is both playing the best, has better numbers together, and I think has a better chance of staying together all game. And that's Nelson Lee and Palmieri. Just watch the ownership. It might come in around 10%. That might be a little bit high for some people, but I think it's just fine in this matchup.
Yeah. Lane Lambert, absolute clown for power play stuff. Like, just stack one unit and play him. Why are you putting Galaxy branding your best players onto a different unit? Matthew Barzal has played with everyone and the kitchen sink this season. Just put him with somebody and leave him there. Islanders suck. Long Island sucks. Eat Arby's. Anyway, you can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, and your first bet is covered up to $1,000 in first bet insurance when you sign up, make a deposit, make your first paid wager at BetMGM. Make sure to smash that link in the description below. That's how you can do it. You'll get step-by-step instructions. You have to make a Stokastic account. If you don't have one, which is free, then you need to make a BetMGM account, obviously. If you're in a legal betting state, you should take advantage of this because 2 free months Stokastic Plus Platinum and $1,000 bet, that's covered. And if the bet loses, you'll get back your bet and site credit equal to the amount of your first wager. So go sign up. go bet like bunting overs today. You know what I mean? Bunting to score a point, bunting assist, bunting power play point. Just do it. And just remember, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone else you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the next one. Another coach just galaxy braining himself. Vegas Golden Knights with a 2.7 total heading into New York. The Rangers have a 3.2 total. Aiden Hill confirmed. Igor Shesterkin is probable. Gerard Gallant at least left the kids line together, who was easily their best line against the Leafs. Now, the other lines I have kind of an issue with, but I understand. It's Panarin, Zibanejad, VC. Like, Panarin and Zibanejad just don't have good numbers at all together. Kreider, Zibanejad, and VC have very good numbers together, but Kreider probably had his worst game of the season against the Leafs, so Kreider gets moved down to the second line with Trocheck and Barclay Goodrow, who should be on the fourth line. Really, he should be in Siberia, but he's on the team on one of the worst contracts in the NHL, and he's in the top six. So kill me. I think I'm just going to go back to the kids here. They've started to get a bit more minutes. Like Lafreniere and Kakko just have so much more confidence when they're playing with Filip Chytil. Filip Chytil's having an excellent season considering he doesn't get any power play time. So yeah, I'm going back to the kids here. The other two lines don't really interest me. If you want to take bits and pieces for the power play, I think that's fine. On the Vegas side, Shea Theodore is back. Jake is rejoicing. Gets top line Taylor Hall yesterday. Gets Shea Theodore today. How can he lose? Stay tuned. We'll find out. I don't really have too much interest in Vegas tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point about Panarin and Zibanejad because they just have not been good together. Like this year, they're up to 135 minutes without Chris Kreider on the line with them. 1.7 expected goals for, 1.9 actual goals for. Like that's just terrible offensive numbers. You look last year they had almost 125 minutes together, 2.5 expected goals for, 2.5 actual goals for. Like
they just don't mesh.
It's actually
it mesh on the power play, but at even strength, it's an absolute wrong show.
It's like 25% more offense this year than last year, or last year than this year, and last year was still below average. That's how bad they've been together this year. I do not know why they're skating together, but they are, and it also makes it an easy fate. I mean, anything can happen. Like, I don't want to say anything can happen. There are a lot of things that can happen in a single night of NHL. Like, as our chat brought up a little bit earlier, you just have to look at the late games last night. Arizona blasting St. Louis, Anaheim going into Colorado and beating Colorado by 2 goals. Things like that happen in the NHL all the time. But we have a pretty meaningful sample, like 260 minutes of Kreider, Zibanejad and Panarin.
They just don't have the eye test. They don't have the numbers. Test.
There's nothing.
Even if you're not an analytical person, you watch the games, like these people suck.
Yeah. So I if you want to play them, but they're coming in with negative leverage by the top stacks tool. I'm not convinced that they're going to stay together all game. And they just have bad offensive numbers together. Like, I think it's a pretty easy fate to not play the Rangers top line. Then you get to the Rangers second line. Do I want to play a line with Barclay Goodrow on it? It's like a pretty quick no. I would have a little bit of interest in a 2-man of like Kreider and Trocheck, but even they're coming in with reasonable amounts of ownership. Like, I think Kreider and Trocheck are playable together. They do have good numbers together. I just think they have a boat anchor beside them, so they're going to have to drag him. And considering the way the Rangers run their lines, they're probably going to run into Vegas 2 quite a bit in this game. And that Vegas 2 line, for as much as they're struggling offensively, they're still really, really good defensively. I don't think the Rangers top line is any good. I think the good second line is in a really brutal matchup. So I'm with you. I think it's the kids line is the one appealing line to me from this Rangers team. Like, because of all the injuries that Vegas has, like their bottom 6 is starting to get a little bit depleted. They moved Michael Amadio up. Will Carrier's still out. Like, those are a couple guys that could make a difference in the bottom six that just won't be there. Like, you're going to match up, against like Phil Kessel and Chandler Stevenson. Like, it's not going to be a problem for that kids line. And the kids line's been playing really well. What I mentioned Philip Hedl in that picks article, again, free to read up at Stokastic.com. Going back 6 weeks, they have about 80 minutes together. So going back to the middle of December, 3.3 expected goals, 5.1 actual goals for per 60 minutes. No power play time really sucks, but Vegas doesn't take a lot of penalties anyway. So if you're targeting for the Rangers, it's not for the power play matchup. I don't know if I'd full stack the kids line because I have concerns like that they could score like 3 goals all at even strength or something like that. But a 2-man of like Hedl and Kako or Hedl and Lafreniere, like Hedl and one of the wingers, I think is perfectly viable here. On the Vegas side, the only line I'd have some interest in is that Vegas second line. But they have had some pretty brutal offensive numbers for well over a month now. I imagine they're probably going to have to get some more ice time here. I think they're a reasonable ownership play, but they're kind of in that Detroit top line boat. It's like, if I was playing 100 lineups, maybe I'd have 2 or 3 in a single entry. I don't think I'm going to get down that far.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. Vegas is just so banged up. It's just hard to play them. San Jose Sharks with a 2.5 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.9 total. James Reimer is confirmed. Antti Ranta is probable. Kevin LeBanc came back last game, slotted in with Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl. That definitely helps that line. That would be the line that I would want to play from the Sharks if I played Sharks. I'm not sure I want to play the Sharks in 1 to 3. If you get to them in MME, I think that's fine. This is a Carolina game, and boy, does that top line have a lot of ownership. Over 20% on Aho, Jarvis, Teravainen. I think if that's the case, I'm going down to Svechnikov, Stastny, Netchis. They've still been pretty good. Svechnikov, Netchis, very good 2-man there. Their prices have come down a little bit. Like Foss, Stahl, Martinook are going to take that Hertl Meyer line. So like there's going to be no resistance for either the Aho or the Stastny lines. I'm just going to the lower ownership here.
Yeah, I don't think Paul Stastny is going to be on that line. They moved Jesperi Kotkaniemi up there in their last game, and I don't think they had morning skate today, but I was reading one of the articles from one of their beat writers, and they had Kotkaniemi projected between Necas and Svechnikov. I think that's important to note for a couple reasons. One, I think Stastny had started to run out of steam a little bit. I think he's my age, which is kind of like our age, which is funny to say because it was like, oh, he's getting old. Like he can't really go for like 18 minutes a night or anything anymore. And he's like, well, I can't really do that either.
I can't even walk up my stairs. So
the reason why it could make a huge difference is Jesperi Kotkaniemi, his offensive impacts in the NHL this year are awful. Terrible, absolutely abysmal offensive impacts from Kotkaniemi so far this season at even strength. By far the worst on the team. Like his negative impact offensively is almost 3 times larger than the next closest Carolina forward. Like that's how bad he's been offensively. If you look league wide, he's in the bottom 5 of regular forwards, and there are over 300 forwards in that sample. Kotkaniemi is terrible offensively. There's just no way around it. I think that he has good offensive skills. He just hasn't reached that level yet. Now, Necas and Svechnikov can absolutely drag Kotkaniemi to some sort of respectability just because Necas and Svechnikov are such good players in their own right. Like it's one reason why Paul Stastny was like all of a sudden a top line center for this team when Sebastian Aho was injured. But when Svechkin and Natchez have Kotkaniemi as their center, 2.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 2.7 actual goals. When they don't have them, over 4 expected goals for, 3.1 actual goals. So goals for go up, however you want to dice it, probably about 16, 17%. Expected goals go way up. The only difference is shooting percentage. Like, he's just not good offensively. 2,700 on DraftKings, like, that's playable. But I'm worried, like, does Kotkaniemi get moved off by the middle of the second period if this game's anywhere close? Like, do they move up, Derek Stepan, or does Paul Stastny go back there or something like that, right? So I don't really want to stack that line. The top line is coming in with way too much ownership, like double the ownership as they are top 2 stack probability. I mean, San Jose generally has a really, really good penalty kill. The only thing that ever holds them back is their goaltending. So, like, what are you really stacking from the Carolina? Like, I think if I was to play Carolina tonight, I would just focus on the wingers. Probably one off the wingers, one off Svechnikov, one off Natchez, one off Teravainen, and something like that is probably where I go. I don't know if I want a full stack Carolina. It sounds like famous last words. Maybe they finally burn me here tonight, but I don't like Kotkaniemi on that line, and I don't want to go through all that ownership the top line has. So that's out for me. On the San Jose side, like, that top line has been really, really good with Kevin Labanc pretty much all season. 65 minutes together since Christmas, 5.4 expected goals for, 5.8 actual goals. Like, they've been just torching the competition. Of all the, like, road lines that are coming in with almost no ownership, like we talked about Detroit 1, we talked about that Vegas second line a little bit earlier, Ottawa coming in with no ownership. I honestly think it might be San Jose I like the best, just because I think they're the best line. And they're coming in under 1% owned. I don't mind San Jose. If you're playing multiple lineups, I don't mind San Jose 1 here. Maybe some one-offs from Carolina.
Yeah, they have a brutal matchup, but, like, it's Hurdle and Meyer. Like, their numbers are ridiculous with Kevin Labanc. Basically, what I got from that, you just basically said Jesperi Kotkaniemi is Yuri Laterra without the drug trafficking problem. So, yeah.
Your words, not mine.
Yeah, my words. Yeah. As we mentioned off the top, are by Prize Picks. And if you click the link in the description below, you can get 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with Prize Picks, especially if you're not in a legal sports betting state like Texas, California, Florida. Those are the big ones. Maybe there's like 3 people in Idaho who are playing DFS, and, sports betting's not legal there. So you can go on Prize Picks. It's a daily prop-based contest. It's like betting parlays. No sharks, optimizers, or mass entries. You can go up to a 5-player lineup that can net you up to 10x your entry fees. You also can go cross sport. So tonight you can do NBA with NHL if you want. So yeah, make sure to click that link in the description below. Get your 1 free month Stokastic Plus Platinum and a $100 deposit match bonus. So let's move on to the next one here. New Jersey Devils with a 2.7 total heading into Dallas. The Stars have a 3.3 total. Devils back-to-back on the road, and Mackenzie Blackwood went last night, so it's probably going to be Vitek Vanacek. Jake Ottinger is confirmed. Rope Hintz is moved back up in between Pavelski and Robertson. It's interesting because they're not getting a ton of ownership here. The Devils defensively have kind of started to slide a little bit. Back-to-back on the road, under 10%. I think you have to consider some Dallas 1 here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that point about the New Jersey Devils, because, it wasn't that long ago that this team was, easily the best defensive team in the league, like, through the first month of the season or whatever. Their last 20 games, I don't know if people have realized this. They have the 5th worst expected goals against mark of 5-on-5 in the league. The only teams that are worse are Anaheim, Montreal, Nashville, and Chicago.
That's great company, by the way.
right ahead of them is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like ahead of them is St. Louis and Vancouver. What is saving New Jersey has been, reasonably good goaltending, 923 goaltending. But even with that, with all their shots allowed, they're still not a top 10 team by goals against. So it's not like a brutal matchup at 5-on-5, I don't think. Going into Nico Hischier, which is what the top Dallas line is going to do, is never, overly appealing. But they've been pretty leaky defensively. Like they're up to that New Jersey top line of Hischier, Bratt, and Andre Palat is up to 135 minutes together, 3.3 expected goals for, 2.9 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like that's below average defensively. It's not really a brutal matchup, back-to-back on the road. I think that's, I think it's a pretty reasonable spot for Dallas 1. Like you said, not getting much ownership, about 8% ownership on DraftKings, very low single digits on FanDuel where they are fairly expensive. But they do have the third highest top 2 stack probability of any line on this slate. And they're coming in with like the 10th most ownership or something like that. Like there is good leverage on this Dallas top line. I don't think the matchup is as bad as as this might have looked 6 weeks ago or something like that. Right. So I really do like Dallas 1 here. I don't want to say they're flat out my favorite top line on this slate, but if they're not number 1, they're certainly in the top 3. And I don't think they're third. So I do like Dallas 1 here. I think if you want to mix it up a little bit, like Joe Pavelski hasn't been getting super involved offensively, only 16 shots in his last 10 games. I think you can leave him off if you want to add like a Miro Heiskanen or throw on Jamie Benn for the power play or something like that. But, just leaving Pavelski there, I think is fine. But it is Dallas 1 that I really, really do like in this matchup. Dallas 3 is kind of interesting as well. Ben Johnston and Dellandrea, they also have reasonably good offensive numbers this season. The New Jersey bottom 6 has really been struggling, so I think it's a matchup that could favor Dallas 3. So I don't even mind like a 2-man of like Johnston and Ben or Dellandrea and Ben or something like that. So that's where I'm at on Dallas. On the New Jersey side, the Dallas top line itself hasn't been that great defensively, and if the New Jersey top line has struggled defensively, they've still been pretty good offensively, 3.3 expected goals for, 3.2 actual goals for. So I do like the New Jersey top line here as well. I kind of like both top lines in this matchup. It's just what you want to pay for. I think all things considered, I would take Dallas 1, but I think New Jersey 1 is very much in play here. Not sure I'd dip down to Hughes, Sharangovich, and Zetterlund, but Jack Hughes certainly always in play, no matter who he's playing with.
Yeah, if you like the price is the problem, right? Jack Hughes 8,600 back-to-back on the road when you can just put in Jason Robertson for 8,400 at home. You know what I mean? Wyatt Johnston has quietly been very, very good the last month. So yeah, I do like Dallas 3 as a filler as well. Let's move on to the people's main event. It's my main event anyway. The Columbus Blue Jackets with a 3 total heading into Vancouver. The Chemtrails have a 3.9 total. Elvis Merzlikins and Colin Delia are probable. Your guess is as good as mine, buddy, with those Canucks lines. Rick Tocchet started lines the last game. I don't think anyone played more than a handful of shifts together, like all game. So who knows? I mean, there's not like, I guess there is some ownership here. Like JT Miller is close to 20%. Kuzmenko, Pettersson are above 15%. You know what I mean? So like, I guess you can concentrate on the power play guys and hope that they do get some 5-on-5 time together. But like the Blue Jackets, for as bad as they are defensively, don't take a ton of penalties. So like, I guess you can hope that Pettersson and Kuzmenko are together. Horvat and I don't even know. Like, I think you can one-off Bo Horvat. On the flip side, Columbus 1 here, coming in about 10%. They have a massive projection here. Canucks are awful defensively. Tocchet doesn't care about defense. Like maybe he does, but he doesn't know how to coach it. So yeah, I think I really like Columbus 1 here.
Yeah, the only road team with a higher implied total today than Columbus is Los Angeles going into Florida, playing Alex Leon. I think that kind of goes to show what people are expecting from Columbus here. And a massive projection on Columbus 1. They have been playing pretty well with Boone Jenner there. Like Jenner's been injured and all that, so there's not a huge sample recently. Going back over their last 60 minutes together, 6-0. 3.1 expected goals for, 3.1 actual goals for. They're all between 23 and 25 minutes in their last game, that overtime game against Edmonton. Now, maybe they added a minute or two because of the overtime, but that's still, between like 21 and 23 minutes. That's heavy usage. Vancouver, I think the thing that's worth noting is they're not taking a ton of penalties of late. Their power play opportunities given up per game has gone down as the season's worn on, especially over the last month or so. But you're not stacking Columbus for their power play prowess, right? Like you're not using Columbus because they're Colorado or something like that. So I'm not worried about any matchup on the Vancouver side, especially if they do use Besser and Horvat together. Besser and Horvat and Mikheyev together, basically league average by expected goals against. I think that's going to be shutdown line. A league average shutdown line doesn't worry me against Patrick Laine and Johnny Gaudreau, and then you mix in the bad penalty kill. I think it's a pretty good matchup for Columbus 1. That would be my other favorite, I think, top line, along with the Dallas top line here on this slate. I really do like the way they play together. I wrote a Patrick Laine in that picks article. The thing that I mentioned is like, there are like any player can break open a slate on any given night. If you ask me, like, name 2 players that are playing tonight that could just crack this slate wide open, one of them is Patrick Laine. This guy can put up, a hat trick with 9 shots, like nobody's business. Like he has that upside to him, even in a down season for him. His 82 game paces this year are for over 35 goals and over 300 shots. Like that's a down year. And, there's certainly upside if Columbus ever gets their stuff together, let's say. So I do like Columbus 1 here. I don't think I would dip down into the Columbus depth. Like I was noticing before we came on the air, it looks like Sillinger and Johnson are going to be playing with Kirill Marchenko. Not sure Sillinger is at the point where he can carry 2 rookie wingers because Gustav Nyquist is injured. So it's Columbus 1 or bust for me. On the Vancouver side, it's just Pettersson, Kuzmenko. As you mentioned, their last game, they got broken up in the third period. It's the only line that I have any sort of faith will actually stay together. Horvat's been playing some pretty heavy minutes under Tocchet. I think he's averaged 22 minutes in his first 2 games. So, I mean, maybe you want to get Horvat and Besser in there, but the Columbus penalty kill is starting to get a lot worse as the season's gone on. And now I want to get guys on that top power play unit, and that's Pettersson and Kuzmenko. They played well together. It's just a matter of who's the third wheel going to be, because like we said, it looked like Lane Peterson, but then he got put on waivers. So that's kind of up in the air right now. But at the least, I like Pettersson, Kuzmenko, but I think it's Columbus 1 I like best in this game.
Yep. There, let's move on to the last game of the night. Calgary Flames with a 3 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1 total. Calgary back-to-back on the road. Jacob Markstrom went last night. Got wrecked by the Blackhawks. Daniel Vladar in net, and our pal Marty Senor Fiesta Martin Jones in net for Seattle. Matty Beniers is hurt, so Ryan Donato is moving up. What? Not Ronaldo. Don't worry. Ronaldo does not play hockey. Probably doesn't even know how to ice skate. Maybe he does, but I think
he knows hockey.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
He doesn't play.
Okay. I think, like, with the lines the way that they are, Tolvin and Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gord would be my go-to here. It's just like going against Calgary should be a tough matchup. We just saw the Flames, or the Blackhawks slice through them like warm butter. Now they get back-to-back on the road. Like, yeah, I guess, some Seattle stuff is in play. There's like other spots that I prefer in 1 to 3. If you get to Bjorkstrand, Tolvin and Gord, I think that's fine. I just, I don't think they're going to be a priority for me. Maybe I get a one-off in there in my one lineup. Maybe not. On the Calgary side, like Martin Jones is just bad. So like you have to consider some of these Calgary lines, which are different. I don't like Coleman got moved up with Kadri and Huberdeau. Jacob Pelleter is with Backlund and Mangiapane. Like that's how they ended the game. They're not going to skate today. It's back-to-back on the road, so that's another issue. You have to wait and see what they're going to be in warm-ups.
Yeah, the thing about Coleman is like he did get moved to a different line with Kadri and Huberdeau, but then he got put back with his normal line for the third period. Jacob Pelletier joined Kadri and Huberdeau. I think it was Wednesday. I played Dakota Joshua because he had moved up in the third period of the last game for Vancouver, and he actually did something. I think Jacob Pelletier is kind of in that boat for this game as well. Like, I think there's a chance he starts the game with Kadri and Huberdeau, and that would be a pretty good spot for him to start. The problem is like you don't really need like a super cheap one-off or super cheap line on this slate, right? Because there aren't a ton of expensive options. I think I would just go back to Backlund, Coleman, Mangiapane, right? Like I think that's their best line. The Calgary top line, 2.4 expected goals for in the month of January. That's terrible. The second line hasn't been a lot better. The third line's been by far their best line, Mangiapane, Backlund, Coleman, as we mentioned yesterday on the show. They're going to avoid that Gord, Bjorkstrand, Tolvin line, which has been really good defensively since Tolvin got there, and get, a little bit of softer matchups in the rest of the Seattle line. It's the Backlund line I like from the Flames. I agree with you on the Kraken side. Not a big fan of Donato between Eberle and Burakovsky. I don't think Donato's really suited for that role. I would just go to Gord, Bjorkstrand, and Burke and Tolvin. And I think there's a reasonable chance they end up with the most ice time as a full line here tonight. And they've been playing pretty well ever since they got put together, 135 minutes now. So I agree with you. It's that Gord line I like on the Seattle side.
Yep. That is the 8-game slate. Coming up at the top of the hour in 5 minutes, we have the So Rare NBA show at 3 p.m. with Greg and Neil. So make sure to check that out coming up at the top of the hour. Let's talk some creatures that play behind the blue line. I think, who do you like here?
Yeah, for cheap guys, I think Sam Bolduc is the guy to name right off the bat. He's going to be running the Islanders' top power play unit, 2,500 on DraftKings, not in the player pool on FanDuel. Always on the ball there, FanDuel. Jake Sanderson has been getting some top power play minutes of late for Ottawa. He's under 4K now for the Sens. Don't mind him. Yanni Hakanpää. I think Hakanpää is second among Stars defensemen in ice time over the last 5 games, like ahead of Lindell, ahead of Suter. So I like Hakanpää. I like Bolduc for pretty cheap. Mario Ferraro, I think he's mid-priced now for the Sharks. He's fine as well. Jake Sanderson and Jalen Chatfield, I think if you're paying 3 to 4K for a defenseman, are the 2 guys I'm looking at. In the mid-price range, Morgan Riley and Drew Doughty. Obviously, Brady Shea got moved to the top power play over Brett Pesce for Carolina. So I don't mind Brady Shea in this matchup at home against the Sharks. Rasmus Anderson as well, because let's not lose sight of the fact that Seattle's penalty kill is really, really bad. Yeah. I don't really like any of the expensive defensemen here tonight. I think the only 2 that kind of stick out are Adam Fox and Miro Heiskanen. Not on FanDuel. Heiskanen is like 7,100 on FanDuel, but at least on DK, Heiskanen and Fox are fine. But I think I'm paying, $5K or less for my defenseman tonight.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of spend-up options. I think for me, it would be Fox, but I don't think there's a massive need to spend up here tonight. Got some interesting options in net tonight, some cheapies that I think we might be interested in. Who are you liking?
Yeah, I wrote up Igor Shesterkin in my picks article. I think he makes a lot of sense. Jake Ottinger at home for Dallas at his price makes a lot of sense as well. Anton Forsberg and James Reimer are the 2 cheap guys on the road I was looking at.
Yeah, I do have some interest in James Reimer. The Carolina come for the expected goal, stay for the shutout is always in play. Yeah. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Patty Laine. Let's go Jackets.
Very nice. Very nice. I'm going Wyatt Johnson. I got to keep my spicy streak going here. Wyatt Johnson.
Like it.
So with the All-Star break and the NHL scheduling, this is the last time you're going to see us on the NHL show, probably for a week and a half. I will be on the MMA show next week, but you won't see us for a little bit. It's sad, but we'll see you in a week and a half. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in Discord.
Good luck, everyone.